I'll put this up. So, alrighty. So, this is this article in Union Leader, and so BAE Systems, which is a New Hampshire that's Hudson Nashua based. They do have another facility, I think, in Texas. They talk about in here, but BAE Systems is like they're engineering company. They produce a lot of different products. Okay, but one of the things that they produce is this system called the Advanced Precision Kill Weapon System, or APKWS. Yeah, that's like Advanced Precision Kill Weapon System. So basically, they just got this $2.7 billion contract to produce their the upgraded level 2 of this system, which had actually been requested for improvements by the Navy. Like, the U.S. Navy had asked this. And actually, here's the article to sort of to show to that. But and the reason I would bring this up is that this is in Union Leader, but it's because half of this work is going to be done here in New Hampshire, right? So the production work to make these units, right? Now, I'm gonna switch over to this video really quick of just sort of just explaining
precision
this
kill
thing.
Weapon.
So sorry about the audio leak through there. So yeah, I have a video directly from the BAE Systems website, so I'll hop straight over there and we'll just watch this for you guys. So they're gonna be detailing this a lot more than I can, and I'll interject if I need to, or stop the video or whatever. So here we go.
Weapon System, or APKWS, is a guided 2.75-inch rocket that uses semi-active laser guidance technology to strike soft and lightly armored targets in built-up and confined areas. APKWS can easily convert an unguided Hydra rocket into a guided rocket without altering the effectiveness of the warhead and fuse. It is a plug-and-play, point-and-shoot system that requires no modification to the aircraft or launcher. The system consists of 4 components: the M423 fuse.
Okay, hold on a second. Can we just address the fact that they just said plug and play? Like, this is a fucking iPod? I realize that, people may want to, slam on me for swearing here. I am sorry. I'm not going to be able to hold my tongue on this. Friggin', look at this thing. Look at it. They use these things, they screw them onto what they call dumb rockets, dumb Hydra rockets, okay? And it makes them smart. I'll just keep this going. I'm sorry, guys.
The M151 warhead, the MK66 Mod 4 rocket motor, and the WGU-59B guidance section. BAE Systems developed an innovative mid-body design for APKWS. The key to the design is the placement of the Distributed Aperture Semi-Active Laser Seeker, or DASL's, aperture domes on each of the guidance section wings. In the retracted position, the optics are stored inside the guidance section and are protected by special wing slot seals. This configuration protects the guidance optics from the effects of environmental conditions and damage from adjacent rocket fire. The guidance system uses the same laser designator as the Hellfire missile, For the pilot, laser targeting procedures and armament control remain unchanged from those of current laser-guided weapons. The weapon can be guided remotely through a targeting team on the ground, a buddy aircraft, or autonomously through the platform's onboard target designation system. Conversion of an unguided rocket into an APKWS guided rocket is simple. The unguided rocket is placed into a fixture where the fuse and warhead are removed from the rocket motor using a strap wrench. Next, the guidance unit is screwed into the rocket motor, and the warhead and fuse are screwed into the guidance section
you want to make
to
this
complete the conversion.
super precision
Before inserting the
bomb?
weapon into the
Yeah,
launcher,
just
a pulse repetition
screw it
frequency
right in.
code that
Why
matches
not?
the one of the designating laser must be dialed into APKWS through the laser switch assemblies. Next, the on-off switch is placed into the on position. Having completed these procedures, the APKWS-equipped rocket is now ready to be loaded into the launcher. Due to its mid-body design and laser seeker aperture placement, APKWS is a lock-on after-launch weapon. The most obvious advantage of this design was revealed during adjacent rocket fire testing. The testing consisted of 6 APKWS-equipped inert rockets placed into the tubes surrounding an unguided rocket. The mid-body guidance sections are fully enclosed in the launcher and are protected from the fire, smoke, and debris from the fired rocket in the center. Upon removal from the launcher, one can see how the APKWS guided rocket's optics are protected from the effects
the
of
whole
adjacent
point of
rocket
this is
fire.
just make it easier and
Within
cheaper
1 second after
to
launch, the
have
battery
laser guided
energizes the
missiles.
electronics in the guidance section. The wings deploy, and the trailing edges, called flaperons, de-roll and stabilize the rocket. Following
show
de-roll, the 4
what it
sensor
looks
aperture
like.
domes work together to create a sight picture with a 40-degree field of regard.
There you go.
Seeker optics then lock onto the laser energy that has been placed on the target, and guidance begins. In testing, the sensors acquired laser target data as far away as 14 kilometers, well beyond the range of the rocket motor. During flight, the seeker electronics interpret the intensity of
this.
the laser energy and determine the angle to the target.
So hold on a second. Just really quick before, I'll leave this image up for a second because while it's paused, I can actually discuss this. But they just talked about how it was accurate at 14 kilometers out, which well exceeds the range of the missile itself. Like the motor inside the missile. So we're talking about hyper precise strikes here, which is speaking as objectively as possible. I mean, the theory in a nutshell here is that the more precise your strike is, the more likely it is to reduce civilian casualties in war. Okay, so that's that's what they'll tell. Oh, you're making war safer. That's what we're doing. We're making war safer, everybody. So that we can really get the bad guys. Look at this nice colored arrangement system with a pleasant little graph at the bottom, so we can make it feel more like video games when we're just killing folks.
Target. This information is sent to the guidance system. The proportional navigation software maintains the closure angle for stationary and moving targets. Simultaneously, the Internal Measurement Unit, or IMU, senses pitch, roll, and yaw. The autopilot uses the IMU and seeker data to calculate flaperon positions. This data is sent to the control actuation system, which in turn controls the flaperons. The result is precision flight to the target. APKWS fills the weapons gap that exists by providing a precision-guided rocket that will eliminate soft and light armored targets. It is not intended to replace the current requirement for unguided rockets used for area suppression, illumination, obscuration, or marking. It's also not designed to replace the need for a high-yield anti-armor weapon such as the Hellfire missile. In U.S. Marine Corps testing, the performance of APKWS has proven to be outstanding. Since testing began in 2002, APKWS has hit its target 68 times within the 2-meter requirement at an average of 0.44 meters or 17 inches from the laser spot. Whether shooting at multiple stationary targets or high-speed shooting at 17 inches from the laser spot.
17 inches from the laser spot. Scary. Scary tech. These are bombs, folks.
Whether shooting at multiple stationary targets or high-speed moving targets, APKWS has demonstrated that it is the right weapon for the warfighter in today's battlefield environments.
Okay, so like that's just like a bit harrowing. I you know I don't know, man. I just so like the selling point on these things, and they say like, oh, they're not meant to replace Hellfire rockets, but like for the poor outfit in Middle East, like those insurgents you're trying to help, the mighty fine piece of equipment right here. So they're marketing them as cheaper than Hellfire rockets. These units are 30,000. I mean, it's not like, let's be clear, like none of us can just go buy one of these things right off the top and we're good and we just start committing crazy airstrikes. But basically it's taking a really, really high powered bit of tech and it's just like, you're strapping it to helicopters and jets. But the one important thing to note here is that this actually is drones can fire these. Like both rotary and fixed wing. So that's like helicopter drones and plane style drones, okay? So these missiles are likely being used and have been used because the videos I just showed you guys are from 2013. So this product has been on the market for some time now. This has been well in use. And to a point where it was so effective that the Navy actually asked BAE to upgrade it. They wanted a level 2. And now they're getting $2.7 billion for it. Okay? So there were already a number of drones that supported this, but this was tested and passed for use. They had done successful testing with I'll show this picture because this is like this is a helicopter drone. This is the MQ-8 Fire Scout. It's a Navy. This is MQ-8B Fire Scout. Unmanned aerial vehicle. According to this, they're actually using biofuel, which is neat, I suppose. But ultimately, it doesn't change the fact that this is a hovering robot bomb firing machine. And that right there brings me to my next point, which is the accuracy of a rocket is only as good as the intel that was supplied to back it up. Okay? Now, I wanted to try and at least pull one example of this so I wasn't just like talking out of thin air. All right? But I have one here. This is actually from the 30th, so this is like just the other day. What day is it? It's like Monday? Yeah. Okay. So this report is from Monday. Um, this is Let's try and get this a little bigger here. All right. So an investigation by Amnesty International has revealed that 3 men killed in a U.S. military airstrike in March after being targeted as al-Shabaab terrorists were in fact civilian farmers with no evidence linked to the links to the armed group. So like, good example of bad intel. Okay. Now I've actually this is a bit more anecdotally speaking, and look, if I would be happy to have, especially if you're an Iraq war or Afghanistan war veteran, I would. You don't have to come on the show, but I want to talk to you about this stuff. Like, help me get a better idea of this. But it's. I have had separate conversation with dudes who have served that and we don't necessarily agree on a whole lot politically, but they have told me just how incredibly difficult it can be to suggest that there might be a problem to your superiors, and just how difficult it is to question authority in the military. And when you've got flawed assessments happening, well, that leads to what's listed here as a military airstrike. Okay. Now, this isn't, this is not like this isn't a brand new thing. There's I feel like this actually is going back to just want to see if I can figure out exactly when this was published. But I've got something here from Columbia Law. This is sort of talking about counting drone strike deaths. Right here they say the uncertainty about civilian deaths is largely due to the U.S. government's resistance to openly providing information about strikes. So in a lot of ways, it can be difficult to verify who ordered a strike. And one thing important to know about government agencies is they don't necessarily talk to each other all the time. So, like, the feds don't necessarily have any idea what the CIA is doing, and the CIA might not necessarily have any idea what the NSA is doing, and they might all be working on the same fucking thing together. But they're not sharing information. I don't know how bad or good that is these days. I would imagine worse, since most of those positions that were supposed to get filled didn't by the current president. So that probably makes it even more of a mess, and I know they're already dealing with a whole slew of crap just associated with internal stuff. But the point is to say, like, look, the amount of red tape you have to go through to just get like basic information about something that's happening is quite extensive. So the idea that we would have very, very transparent understandings of like number of civilians that have been killed in airstrikes since 2011, look, we don't have a good metric for that. And articles like the one on Amnesty International, and to hop back over, like, this is, it's it's proof that that we're doing strikes that are just straight killing people. And I mean, you know, look, like I've got casualty reports here from the Combined Joint Task Force for Operation Inherent Resolve, which is they were established by the DoD to formalize ongoing military actions with the rising threat to ISIS. So, at any rate, they put out reports pretty regularly, and I'm gonna show this because I know I might be getting kind of a little far away from the place where I started, but this is key stuff. So, it's important to note here. The coalition assesses at least 1,313 people, the civilians, have been unintentionally killed by the coalition. But what they explain here is they talk about like credible and non-credible reports. And I just want to read sort of this section right here, and I'll try and I'll highlight it. So the results of each investigation of an allegation will fall into one of two categories, either credible or non-credible. An assessment of credible means that our team investigated the allegation and determined that, based on available evidence, more likely than not, the death was the result of a coalition action. A non-credible evaluation means the information we have to assess the allegation using our available resources cannot determine, to the standard of more likely than not, that the death was the result of the coalition action. There could be a number of reasons for this, to include no corroborating strikes at that time or location, there was insufficient evidence to support the allegation, or there is simply insufficient or overly vague data in the allegation itself. I just want to take a moment on that first point that they make right down there about no corroborating strikes at that time or location. Well, that depends on whether or not that particular entity who ordered that strike wants to admit it. Now, if you're saying, hey, we have reported civilian deaths from this strike. Gee, I wonder what the likelihood of that unit trying to cop to, oh yeah, we bombed out all those civilians. Like, who wants to admit that, dude? Nobody. So what are the chances that just someone who screwed up that's on the higher end of things just wants to cover it up? Like, I don't know. But that's an opportunity for human error right there. So they go on to say, it is important to note that while the coalition has a substantial quantity of data at its disposal to investigate every claim, we welcome any information from any source that will enable us to determine the truth. Furthermore, we routinely reopen closed investigations based on new information that might help us attain more accurate results. So that right there is basically copying to say that nothing that you read in this report is 100% definitive. It's going to change next month. And there will likely be things that we've determined previously that were just, no, nothing happened. Oh, no, sorry, we had to open that case. And I wonder that, I don't have a statistic here of how many of those cases that they had to reopen that then were found did result in civilian deaths. But look, Reuters reported the other day, here, we've got video for this, so I'll pop this one up.
The US drone strike was intended to hit an Islamic State hideout in Afghanistan, but instead it killed at least 30 civilians resting after a day's labour in the fields. The attack Wednesday night also injured another 40 people after accidentally targeting farmers and labourers. They just finished collecting pine nuts in eastern Afghanistan. A tribal elder said the workers had lit a bonfire and were sitting together when a drone targeted them. A senior US official in Kabul confirmed the drone strike, but did not share details of civilian casualties. Jihadist IS fighters first appeared in Afghanistan in 2014. The US estimates there are around 2,000 Islamic State fighters in the country. There's been no let-up in assaults by Taliban and IS as Afghanistan prepares for a presidential election this month. At least 20 people died in a Taliban truck bomb in southern Afghanistan Thursday. Casualties are expected to rise as rescuers sift the rubble. The militants wanted to target a training base for Afghanistan's powerful National Directorate of Security, but parked the vehicle full of explosives outside a hospital gate nearby, a Defense Ministry source said. The Taliban have been carrying out nearly daily attacks since the collapse of peace talks with the US this month.
Okay, so it's just, look, like, we've got this as an example. I think I had one more that I wanted to share. Yeah, less, we got this, which is, dozens of civilians reported killed in Afghan commando strike. This is like less than a week later and about 523 miles away, 842 kilometers, around 40 civilians killed from a U.S.-aided raid. So, like, that's not even a direct attack. That's just, like peripherally, we were involved in something that resulted in a whole bunch of civilian deaths. So why am I talking about all this stuff? Okay. Well, I'm bringing this stuff up because when we talk about the APKWS, we think, well, I wonder how many of those strikes used that unit. I wonder how many of that official 1,314 people were killed with the assistance of one of those units. I wonder how many people that are not listed in that number were killed with the aid of one of those units. People like those pine nut farmers who, you know what, like, their lives are not any different than the lives of the people who work in that BAE Systems factory. And, like, I would just also like to point out that Senator Jeanne Shaheen sits on, like, a number of committees that let me see if I can pull up. Pull her up on Ballotpedia so we can just, yeah. So let's just really quick acknowledge Jeanne Shaheen sits on the Committee on Ethics, Committee on Appropriations, Committee on Armed Services, Committee on Foreign Relations, and Committee on Small Business and Entrepreneurship members. Okay, all of those things play straight into the hand of BAE Systems on this one. Okay? So the idea that we could count on at least that senator to do anything that would, like, curtail this type of behavior, not to mention, like, the corporate tax cuts that are coming through from GOP right now. Like, come on, man. You're forcing folks in this state now. Like, I went and looked at some of those incomes. You're talking about people that are earning somewhere between $28,000 and $56,000 a year for the base level engineering jobs that you would get at BAE Systems, what they're offering. Okay, so that's under that $70,000 a year mark, which is that's typically my point at which I say, okay, like, you're probably doing okay now. So you're talking about people that are living under that mark. So they might still be struggling, especially if those people have an engineering degree, which allowed them to get that job in the first place. And likely they're trying to pay off student debt. So you're making those people who are also potentially preventing the state from graying, which is another thing people seem to care about. You're forcing those people to make their living off of the blood and death of people just like them somewhere else in the world. And, you know, when I hear, like, look, like, anti-interventionism is, like, a key point for a lot of libertarians. It's a key point for a lot of hyper-progressive people. And, you know what, like, one of the countries that's going to be buying these is India. Okay? And I actually have numbers on that one. So, yeah, I mean, the UAE requested 20,004 units of these. This is before the most recent buy. Let me be clear about this. This happened, like, this is earlier this spring. This is back in, like, May. And India was getting 38 units to be outfitted on MH-60R helicopters that were like the full kit and caboodle. I mean, these are super militarized. Now, on it, like, India's buying those helicopters. Where do you think those are going to be used? They're probably going to be used in Kashmir, which I can go into that on a completely different day about, like, what's, like, why that is super jacked, and, like, maybe it's worth it. It doesn't have anything to do with here necessarily, aside from maybe however much pink Himalayan salt people are buying. But this is super, like, this is a certain hypocrisy that we as a state are allowing to continue, and not creating some kind of boycott or strike or something of, like, I haven't quite figured out exactly how I would suggest taking this down, aside from, say, if you're thinking about getting a job at BAE Systems, don't do it. Maybe it's something that we need to have conversations about, broader protests about, and that's something I can talk to organizer friends about. But this is, look, like, I want to raise awareness on this because I want folks to question, like, hey, if I'm making, like, I care about jobs in New Hampshire. Like, yeah, you care about jobs in New Hampshire? Do you care at all about what those jobs do? Because I do. I don't know. It just, personally, it leaves a bad taste in my mouth that, like, you know, it's one thing to have Sig Sauer in the state and they're making guns. Like, you know, like, look, I will respect that business to a certain extent, although I don't want to get too deep on talking about Sig, but laser guidance systems for missiles that are marketed as a plug-and-play function, which is something that you use to describe cell phones and video game systems and, like, DJ controllers. And you're talking about it for warheads? To strike soft targets? I don't know, man. That just doesn't sit right. And I would just caution everybody to think about that one a little bit more, because it's not good.